We all want the same thing. We want to be healthy, and we want our children to be healthy. Workers in your factory want that for themselves as well, but sometimes they may need a little bit of extra support. Most people can drastically improve their nutritional status and overall health by making very small changes in their behaviors. What is a behavior? Well, simply put, it means an action or a particular way of doing things. Making small changes in what we choose to eat, even in how we prepare the foods, can have a big impact on our health and nutrition. In this lesson, you're going to learn how to help women make positive choices, as well as how to set up your workplace for success. Welcome to Lesson 1 of the training, Helping to Support Behavior. There are 4 main learning objectives in this lesson. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to define the main terms associated with behavior change, understand the concept of enabling environments, identify supportive actions that encourage change, and be able to lead a behavior change dialogue. Here are the topics that will be covered in Lesson 1. We'll talk about barriers or things that prevent a person from adopting a behavior. We'll talk about enablers or things that help a person adopt a behavior. We will discuss the social ecological model, which helps us understand the social influences that are all around us and how to create supportive environments for change. And we will learn about the dialogue counseling process. Helping someone change a poor behavior into a positive one is kind of like taking them on a trip. A behavior is like an address. It is specific, and it tells a person where to go and what to do. Along the journey of change, a person will face barriers. Specific enablers for each barrier will help a person overcome the problems that they face. As a behavior change agent, or BCA, our job is to help non-doers or people who do not practice a behavior to become doers, or people who do practice the healthy behavior that we are promoting. In the Moodle platform, you'll find a video called The Barrier Road. You can pause this part of the presentation to watch the video. It will explain this journey toward behavior change. Once you've watched the video, come back and continue the lesson. Now that we have looked at behavior change like a journey, let's look at some important terms that we're going to use all through all of our lessons. A behavior statement is a specific definition of the positive behavior that tells people who should do it, when they should do it, and how to practice a behavior. Remember that behavior statements must be very specific, like an address to find a house. A doer is a person who does a behavior. A non-doer is a person who does not yet practice the healthy behavior that we're promoting, but our goal is to support them so they can adopt that healthy change. A barrier is something that prevents a person from practicing a behavior, and an enabler is a solution to a specific problem that's something that will help someone overcome a particular barrier. A behavior change agent is any person that helps lead someone else through the journey of change. In these factories, that can be a manager, a canteen supervisor or worker, a human resource professional, or a nurse. It can even mean other women working in the same factory if they help and support their coworkers in adopting healthy nutrition behaviors. Women are not just able to adopt new behaviors because they want to or they think they're important. All of us have people around us who can either influence us positively through support or negatively. When we want women to adopt a new positive behavior, we have to think about how we can support them. There are 3 levels of what's called the socio-ecological model. And what that means is that each of us live in a household, and those households are within communities, And those communities operate within systems and structures. When we talk about this model, we mean that it is important for behavior change agents to help create these supportive environments where new behaviors can be adopted and sustained. So let's look at each of them. In the household, if a woman learns a behavior that is likely to prevent malnutrition in her children, for example, she may believe that the new information is good and genuinely want to practice that behavior. But the likelihood is that she will have to go home and get support from others living in her home. That can mean her husband or her mother-in-law, her father, grandparents, or even older children if she has any. If they are opposed to or not on board with the change, then the mother may experience barriers from the family members. As behavior change agents, we need to learn how to help a woman overcome barriers in her own home. That may mean having a meeting for husbands or grandparents, or it can mean making a home visit if that's an option. The same is true within the community. Women mostly want to do the same things that their friends and their peers do. They may also be influenced by faith or traditional leaders. A lack of access to foods and supplies they need to do the behaviors can also be a barrier. So we must engage with vendors and markets to increase access. And at the systems and structures level, laws, policies, and services, both in the communities and in the factories where we work, can have an impact on a woman's ability to practice a behavior. For example, if we want a woman to breastfeed her baby exclusively to 6 months, she might have to do some advocacy in her own home to get support from her husband or her mother or mother-in-law or whomever is helping care for the child and feed the child. At the community level, she's probably going to want to be encouraged by her friends and peers who are also doing the same thing, and maybe even healthcare workers. At the systems and structures level, there are many regulations, for example, that might exist in hospitals that can either promote or make this behavior more difficult to achieve. So, what do you think might be the best way to understand what a woman's barriers are to practicing positive behaviors? Well, probably the best way is to ask her. When we have conversations with a woman about a particular behavior, we talk about barriers and enablers. We call this dialogue counseling. What that means is we follow certain steps to help us lead a conversation that gives us clues that we can work with. Just like we did when we took the behavior journey along the barrier road, we want to understand what is preventing a woman from completing that journey and arriving at her destination. Remember, the destination is the behavior in that trip analogy. We also can get clues from the woman herself about what things would be the most helpful to her. So we discover these barriers and enablers by using a dialogue counseling process. The first thing to remember when working to help women with behavior change is principle for change number 1, and that is that people must have a reason to change. Would you take your car to the mechanic if it wasn't broken? Would you call a plumber to come work on your house if your water was working fine? What about an electrician? No, that would cost you a lot of time, money, and effort, right? It's the same with behavior change. Most people will not work to change something if they don't understand that the behavior can fix a problem, or if they don't think that it's something that's very important. People have to understand that there's a benefit in practicing a behavior, and the benefit needs to be more important to them than the time, resource, and emotional energy that they must expend to be successful. This is why, as a behavior change agent, you need to help a client worker to realize that the change is for the better before you will be effective. So the first step in the dialogue counseling process is to present a problem, because People need to have a reason to change. The second principle for change is that people need to be ready for a change. So oftentimes sharing short stories with contrasting behaviors and outcomes can help a woman analyze and see a problem and potential solutions. And through using stories, a woman can contrast certain behaviors that address a problem with a negative outcome and different positive, healthy behaviors that we're promoting that have a positive outcome. This helps a woman increase her critical thinking skills and helps her make a connection between cause and effect. So the choices that we make and the outcomes that we'll get based on those choices. The second step in the dialogue counseling process is to identify barriers and enablers. So we did a lot of research to understand these things for garment workers as a whole, but having individual conversations with women can also help us understand what we can do immediately to help her work through the process of change. Once a woman has a good idea of the problem you're trying to prevent, like malnutrition in her child, for example, and she can make the association between a person's choices or behaviors and the outcome, then you're ready to move into finding out what she thinks her challenges specifically will be and what will help her overcome them. This leads to principle for change number 3. People need to be involved in the change. Most of us don't just like others telling us what to do. So we involve people in the change by asking women what their problems are and asking them to propose solutions instead of just telling her what we think they should do. The better a behavior change agent is at the dialogue counseling process, the more involved the women will feel. And the more the women contribute towards their own solutions, the more their capacities will be built to overcome barriers on their own, going forward for all new behaviors they try to adopt, not just the ones that we're promoting. Step 3 in the dialogue counseling process is to negotiate what we call small, doable actions. Studies show that people are more likely to do something if they make a promise or verbal commitment to another person. Oftentimes, when we negotiate about making commitments, a woman can't make the promise that she's going to do the behavior directly, but she might be able to engage in a small, doable action that will lead her closer towards success in practicing the behavior. So when a woman identifies a particular barrier, our job then is to get her to suggest solutions or enablers and then ask her what she's willing to do. When a BCA like you negotiates actions, you're basically asking a woman what she's willing to try. Most times people do not adopt new behaviors because people just tell them to do them and that's what they expect them to do with no questions asked. Some solutions or enablers may not be acceptable to people due to their culture or religion or family pressure or even due to their lack of resources. So think back to the Barrier Road journey we discussed earlier. You may be very tempted to present solutions to a woman and find that she's not willing to act on your suggestions. In that case, it's very important to keep in mind principle for change number 3 that we just discussed. People have to be involved in the change. Most people do not like to be told what they should do. Rather, they like to understand their options and make their own choices. So what is each woman willing to do? A small doable action is something that a woman may be willing to do that is not the exact behavior, but it will get her close to adopting the behavior. For example, if you're a behavior change agent and promoting that a woman give colostrum to her baby within 1 hour of birth, and the woman has said it will be difficult for her because it's not in their culture and her mother may disagree, then she's not likely to say that she can give colostrum to her baby. But at that point, she might have to take the action of talking to her mother and teaching her what she's learned about the health benefits of immediate breastfeeding and colostrum for both mother and baby. So talking to her mother then is the negotiated small doable action that will help her overcome the barrier of having an unsupportive mother. That will get her closer to success for giving colostrum to her baby when her baby is born. And the last step in the dialogue counseling process is to secure commitments. Studies show that people are more likely to do something if they've made a promise or a verbal commitment to another person. This increases a person's own sense of personal accountability, and it supports a social norm about being honest and trustworthy to others. A woman may not be in a position to promise to practice a promoted behavior at a given point, like we just discussed about colostrum, but we will expect her to have negotiated and now commit to at least these small doable actions. Eventually, the negotiated behavior and the commitment will be to practice the behavior itself. Providing a notebook or journal to all working women in the factory who are targeted with these nutrition messages will help factory-based nurses or staff keep track of these commitments and to check in with women on a regular basis to see if they've been able to keep their commitments. This supports principle for change number 4. People need to be surrounded by others who are supportive of the change. This helps to create the supportive environments that we discussed earlier. Having women express their commitments to other women working in the factory as well as to the behavior change agent helps to establish a new social norm, one which tells all of the mothers this is the normal thing to do. Everyone else is doing it. In this way, women feel that if they do not change, they will be the only one not doing the things, or they'll be the only one doing things the old way. And that can be a powerful motivator because everyone wants to do what their friends and peers are doing. This concludes our first lesson. Can you define all of our key terms? What's a doer? What's a non-doer? What's a behavior statement? What do you think a barrier is? What about an enabler? And what about a BCA or a behavior change agent? What are the different levels of the enabling environment? And what can each of you do to create supportive environments for women working within your factories? Can you list at least one action that a manager can take to help create a supportive environment? What about a human resource professional? What about a staff nurse? Who are the key people in a woman's home that can help her practice a behavior or even make it more difficult for her? What are the 4 steps in the dialogue counseling process? And what are the 4 principles for change? If you can't remember all of these important elements from the lesson, you should go back and review it again. Everything we do over the course of this training will build upon these terms and these principles. Remember that the dialogue counseling process has 4 steps. The first is to present the problem. The second is to identify barriers and enablers. The third is to negotiate small doable actions. And the fourth is to secure commitments. Remember that there are 4 basic principles for behavior change. The first is people must have a reason to change. The second is that people need to be ready to change. And sometimes that readiness is psychological or mental, and sometimes it's physical. For example, she might need a certain supply or access to a service in order to make a change. The third one is people need to be involved in the change. And remember, the most important way we can do that is to dialogue with women and ask for their opinions. And the fourth one is people need to be surrounded by others who are supportive of the change. And that's why we need to work on creating supportive environments, both in the workplace and at home. So this concludes our first lesson. And before moving on to the next lesson, please complete the Let's Discuss and Problem Story and Let's Discuss Positive Story exercises in the Moodle platform. Always look for all of the activities exercises, homework assignments, or quizzes in every lesson before continuing on to the next one. And we'll see you back here in lesson 2.